The Living Park, Aethelwood's Buried Secret. Hello and welcome back to the Wilderness Protocol. For those of you who are new here, we don't deal in campfire stories or common folklore. We are not here to discuss Sasquatch sightings or the predictable tales of ghostly apparitions. The protocol is a different kind of archive. It's a collection of evidence, of carefully compiled accounts, and of solemn warnings. It is a guide to a truth that civilization has tried very hard to forget, that the wild places of this world are not empty. They are not merely landscapes of inert rock and passive biology. Some of them are aware. Tonight, we are not examining a creature, or a haunting, or a singular unexplained event. We are delving into something far more fundamental. We are going to discuss a place, or rather, something that masquerades as a place. A sprawling expanse of forest, mountain, and river that has been designated as a national park, a sanctuary for public enjoyment. But the public has no idea what they are enjoying. They walk its trails, fish in its streams, and camp under its canopy, all while standing on the skin of something impossibly ancient. The subject of tonight's protocol is officially known as the Aethelwood National Park, but we will be referring to it by a different name whispered in the oldest records we could find. We will call it the Sleeper, because what we have uncovered, through ranger logs, classified geological surveys, and the lost journals of a brilliant, doomed historian, all points to one terrifying hypothesis. Aethelwood Park isn't a place. It's a living, breathing, and very old consciousness. And we, the fleeting human visitors, are nothing more than microbes crawling on its surface. And sometimes it stirs in its sleep. So silence your phone. Dim the lights. We have a great deal of ground to cover. The protocol for Aethelwood begins now. Our understanding of Aethelwood begins, as it so often does, with those who spend the most time on the fringes of the unknown, the park rangers. These are practical, grounded individuals. They are trained to identify animal tracks, predict weather patterns, and manage human foolishness. They are not prone to flights of fancy, which is why the official resignation letter and subsequent private correspondence of a man named Frank Miller serves as our entry point. To understand the weight of Frank Miller's testimony, you must first understand the man himself. For 15 years, from 1993 to 2008, Frank was Aethelwood. He wasn't just an employee. He was a component of the park, as much a part of its ecosystem as the black bears and the Douglas firs. His colleagues joked that if you took a soil sample from the Ethel River Valley, you'd find traces of Frank's boot leather and coffee. He was a model ranger, the kind you see on recruitment posters, weathered, capable, with eyes that held the calm, steady patience of the mountains themselves. He knew the name of every wildflower, the call of every bird, the subtle shift in the wind that predicted rain 3 hours before it fell. He loved the park, not with a sentimental, poetic love, but with the deep, functional respect a master craftsman has for his materials. Then, in the fall of 2008, he walked into his supervisor's office, a place he'd been 1,000 times before. He placed his badge on the worn oak desk, the metal making a quiet, final sound in the room. He said he could not spend another day inside the park's boundaries. He resigned effective immediately, forfeiting a pension he was only a few years away from securing. He packed 2 suitcases, sold his small house in the nearby town of Oak Haven, and moved to a sun-scorched town in the Arizona desert, as far from a dense forest as a man in North America can get. The official reason cited in the park's internal documents was personal health issues related to stress, a conveniently vague explanation. But in a series of emails to his sister, Sarah, emails she later provided to an investigator who understood their true significance, Miller detailed the real reason. It wasn't a single event. It was, as he put it, a slow, creeping accumulation of wrongness. A wrongness that began with a sound that wasn't a sound. He called it the hum. For his first decade in the park, Frank Miller experienced the forest as a symphony of sound. The crisp rustle of autumn leaves underfoot, the sharp crack of a twig under a deer's hoof, the distant roar of the upper falls, the gentle whisper of wind breathing through the vast canopies of pine. And beneath it all, a deep, profound silence. The kind of silence that feels ancient and cleansing, a silence that lets you hear the beat of your own heart. That silence, he explained, was the baseline of reality in Aethelwood. Around 2005, the baseline began to shift. The silence was replaced. In an email dated April 2006, he wrote to his sister, "Sarah, do you ever get a sound stuck in your head? Not a song, but a tone. For the past year, I've been hearing this thing. It's a low-frequency hum, so low it's almost inaudible. At first, I thought it was a distant truck, maybe on the highway miles south of the park boundary. But it never fades. I'll be deep in the backcountry, 10 miles from any road, and I'll shut off my truck's engine and just listen. And it's there. It's not a sound you hear with your ears. It's a sound you feel in your bones, in your teeth, like standing too close to a massive, idling engine that's buried deep underground. I thought it was tinnitus, a sign of getting old. I got my hearing checked twice. Perfect, the doctor said. I'm starting to think the park itself is making the noise." At first, other rangers acknowledged it, but they brushed it off. They called it the Aethelwood buzz. They came up with mundane explanations. Atmospheric pressure changes, seismic activity, even secret military experiments in the mountains. It became a running joke. But Frank wasn't laughing, because he started noticing a correlation. The louder the hum became on certain days, the stranger the world around him acted. He was documenting a pattern of high strangeness, incident by incident. The first category of phenomena involved sound itself. One morning in the summer of 2007, he was patrolling the Eastern Ridge, a place famous for its morning chorus of birds. He described sitting on a log, sipping coffee from his thermos, immersed in the beautiful cacophony of life. Then it stopped, not faded away, not quieted down. It stopped as if a switch had been flipped, plunging the entire forest into a silence that was absolute and terrifying. He wrote, "It wasn't the old silence, the peaceful kind. This was a dead silence, a heavy, pressurized void. Not a single chirp, not a buzz from an insect, not a rustle from a squirrel. I sat there for almost an hour, completely unnerved. The birds were still in the trees. I could see them. They were just silent, frozen, as if they were all listening to something I couldn't hear. Then, as suddenly as it stopped, the sound came back on all at once. The birds exploded into song again, as if nothing had happened. It was the most unnatural thing I'd ever experienced." The second category of phenomena involved animal behavior. The creatures of Aethelwood, creatures Frank had known and understood for years, began to act in ways that defied all biological and behavioral norms. Deer, normally timid and flighty, would be found in small clearings, standing in near-perfect circles. They wouldn't be grazing or interacting. They would be perfectly still, heads bowed slightly, all facing inwards, as if attending a silent, solemn ceremony. They were so engrossed in this strange ritual that Frank could walk within 30 feet of them before they would, as one, slowly lift their heads and scatter, seeming dazed and confused. The most disturbing animal encounter occurred in the spring of 2008, just months before his resignation. He was hiking along the bank of the Ethel River when he saw a black bear, a large, healthy male sitting on a flat rock at the water's edge. It wasn't drinking. It wasn't fishing. It was staring intently at its own reflection in the calm water. Frank, an expert in bear behavior, knew this was wrong. He hid behind a tree and watched. For over 20 minutes, the bear did not move a muscle. It just stared. Its posture was not one of curiosity, but of mesmerized fascination. Frank, sensing something was deeply amiss, decided to deliberately make a noise. He snapped a thick branch. Normally, this would send a bear running. This one, however, reacted with an unnerving slowness. Its head turned, not with the quick, alert motion of a wild animal, but with the languid, dreamlike movement of a sleepwalker. It looked directly at Frank, and its eyes held no recognition, no fear, no aggression. Frank described its expression in his email as one of utter incomprehension. It was, he wrote, like looking at a shell. The animal was there, but the consciousness, the wild spirit of the bear, was absent. After a long moment, the bear blinked slowly, shook its head as if waking up, and lumbered off into the woods, leaving Frank standing by the river, his heart pounding with a fear he had never known before. These incidents piled up, one on top of the other, wearing away at his rational scientific worldview. The hum was the constant, the soundtrack to the growing wrongness. But the final straw, the event that shattered his resolve and sent him fleeing for the desert, occurred in October of 2008. He was on a final multi-day solo patrol before the heavy snows came. His route took him deep into the park's northern backcountry, a rugged and seldom visited region known as the Whispering Peaks. From the moment he entered the region, he knew something was different. The hum was no longer a subtle, bony vibration. It was a physical pressure against his eardrums. He felt a constant, low-grade nausea. The air itself felt thick, heavy, and charged with static. On the second night, he made camp near a small, isolated glacial lake called Mirror Tarn. The name was apt. Its surface was usually like polished black glass. The air was unnaturally still. The sky was a brilliant, cold canopy of stars. But the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. It wasn't the feeling of a predator, he explained. He knew that feeling well. This was different. The watching wasn't coming from the treeline. It felt like it was coming from the ground beneath him, from the ancient stone of the peaks surrounding him, from the sky itself. His last, desperate email to his sister was written on his BlackBerry from his truck after he fled the park. It detailed the events of that night. "Sarah, I'm out. I'm done. I can't go back in there. Ever. Tonight at Mirror Tarn." The hum was so loud I felt sick. I was sitting by my fire, trying to read a book, but I couldn't concentrate. The feeling the feeling of being stared at by the whole world. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my mag light and my sidearm, more for comfort than anything, and I walked to the edge of the lake. The water was perfectly still, like glass. The stars were reflected on it, a perfect mirror image of the sky. But something was wrong. I stood there watching, and then I saw it. The reflection of the stars, it was moving. Not drifting, as it would if there was a breeze. It was pulsing, gently, rhythmically. The entire starfield, every single pinprick of light, was slowly expanding and contracting on the water's surface. It was pulsing in perfect time with the hum I felt in my chest. My first thought was that I was hallucinating, that the pressure, the sound, was finally getting to me. I crouched down at the water's edge for a closer look. And that's when the real horror hit me. The reflection wasn't the thing that was pulsing. The lake itself was. The surface of the water was rising and falling, just by an inch or two, in a perfect, slow rhythm. The water would creep up the tiny pebbles on the shore, and then recede, up and back, like the slow, deep heartbeat of something enormous. I put my hand flat on the cold, hard ground, and I felt it. The ground beneath my feet was doing it too. A faint, powerful tremor that matched the pulse of the lake and the rhythm of the hum. It wasn't an earthquake. It was too regular. It was breathing. The whole damn park was breathing. I didn't think. I just ran. I left my tent, my fire, my gear. I grabbed my pack and I hiked 6 miles back to my truck in the dark. I didn't use my flashlight. I was afraid of what it might show me. This place is not what we think it is. It's alive. And it's starting to wake up. Frank Miller was the first canary in the coal mine. He was a man of the wilderness who recognized, on a primal level, that the wilderness he knew was changing. He didn't have the scientific language to describe what was happening. He didn't have theories or hypotheses. He just had the raw, unfiltered sensory data of his own terror. He sensed the peripheral wrongness. He felt the park stir in its slumber. And he knew enough to flee. Others, however, were not content to observe from the edge. Others, driven by scientific curiosity, would venture closer. They would seek to measure and quantify the phenomenon Frank Miller had escaped. And in doing so, they would pay a far greater price. If Ranger Frank Miller's testimony represents a primal, sensory warning, a man who felt the fever without knowing the cause, then the account of Dr. Eris Thorne's geological team is the clinical diagnosis. It is the moment the unsettling feeling is placed under a microscope, revealing a biology that is both terrifying and fundamentally impossible. In the summer of 2012, 4 years after Frank Miller fled the park, a team of 4 scientists secured a special research permit. Their destination was the same remote, northern sector that had broken Miller's spirit, the region of the Whispering Peaks. Their leader was Dr. Eris Thorne, a geologist whose ambition was matched only by his brilliance. Thorne believed the granite formations in this area were part of an unusually ancient and deep batholith, a massive, subterranean body of igneous rock. His goal was simple, if audacious: to create the first complete, 3-dimensional seismic map of the mountain's deep structures. To understand the bones of the earth. He had assembled a top-tier team. There was Maya Singh, a doctoral candidate specializing in petrology, whose keen eye for mineral composition was legendary in their department. There was Ben Carter, another PhD candidate, an expert in seismic imaging software who could turn raw vibration data into coherent underground maps. And finally, there was Gavin Bell, a veteran field technician, a man who had spent 30 years setting up remote research camps from the Antarctic ice shelves to the Amazon basin. He was the practical anchor to their academic ambition. They were equipped with the best technology money could buy: cutting-edge ground-penetrating radar, an array of hypersensitive seismic sensors, and a powerful portable core sampling drill. They were prepared for any geological contingency. They had no contingency plan for geology that was alive. They were scheduled to be in the field for 3 weeks. They never returned. The official search and rescue operation began 2 weeks after they missed their first scheduled satellite phone check-in. The search helicopter located their base camp on the 3rd day. The site was on a small, protected plateau overlooking the vast expanse of the park. From the air, everything looked normal. On the ground, the scene was even more unnerving in its placidity. The team's 2 high-tech tents were zipped closed. Their equipment was neatly stored in its cases. On a portable folding table, 4 plates of rehydrated chili sat half-eaten, forks resting on the rims. A thermos of coffee was still lukewarm. There were no signs of an animal attack, no torn canvas, no scattered supplies. There were no signs of a struggle, no evidence of foul play. The team's jackets were on their chairs, their hiking boots by the tent flaps. They had, by all appearances, simply ceased to exist in the middle of a meal. But they left something behind. On the cot inside the lead tent, resting on a neatly folded sleeping bag, was Dr. Thorne's field journal. The final entries of this journal transform the unsettling premonitions of Ranger Miller into quantifiable, terrifying data. The Park Service classified the journal as part of the official investigation, but a sympathetic contact, disturbed by its contents, made a copy for us. What follows is a direct timeline of the expedition's disintegration, taken from Dr. Thorne's own words. The first week of entries are routine. Thorne logs their GPS coordinates, details the successful deployment of their seismic sensor array, and complains with academic wit about Ben Carter's taste in campfire music. Then, on day 8, the tone begins to shift. Day 8. Still struggling to calibrate the sensors. We're picking up a persistent, low-frequency resonance that's creating noise in the data. It's not magnetic. We've shielded the geophones completely. It seems to be geological. A constant, low-level seismic vibration, centered at approximately 1.5 Hertz. It's incredibly stable, almost unnervingly so. Bell, our ever-practical technician, suggests it could be a deep, distant magma flow, but there's no volcanic activity anywhere in this range. It's a clean, pure tone. Almost artificial. Puzzle. The oddest thing is the effect it has on us. We're all feeling fatigued, a bit on edge. Maya has been complaining of persistent headaches since we arrived in this sector. This is the first scientific documentation of the hum. Thorne, a man of science, has captured it, measured it, and given it a name, anomalous low-frequency resonance. For him, it is simply a problem to be solved, an obstacle to clean data. By day 11, the puzzle has become an obsession. They have begun drilling for their first core sample, aiming to extract a 10-meter column of the ancient granite. The entry from that evening is chilling. It is the moment the expedition crosses a critical threshold. Day 11. A breakthrough, but of a kind I cannot comprehend. The drill reached a depth of 50 meters this afternoon. The core sample we extracted is impossible. I've checked the mineralogy twice. It's granite, yes, Archeanera granite, just as I predicted. But it's threaded with something else. Thin, dark red, fibrous filaments. They are woven through the crystalline structure of the rock itself. When we laid the core sample out, I touched one. It was soft to the touch, pliant, with an almost organic texture. When we extracted the final section of the core, a small amount of dark, viscous fluid seeped from the drill hole. It wasn't groundwater. It was thick, almost like crude oil, but a deep crimson. It smelled faintly of copper and ozone. Bell, in a moment of gallows humor, said it looked like the mountain was bleeding. I did not find it amusing. We have sealed the sample in a biohazard container, a precaution that now feels horribly inadequate. I cannot reconcile this with any known geological or biological process. Think about what this means. They had drilled into what should be sterile, ancient stone. Instead, they had found what could only be described as a vascular system. They had, in effect, taken a biopsy. 2 days later, they discovered that the patient was aware of the procedure. Day 13. The resonance has changed. It's no longer a steady 1.5 Hertz hum. It is now intermittent. Pulses. The rhythm is slow, perfectly regular. One distinct pulse of vibration every 45 seconds. The ground visibly shudders with each one. Their microtremors, barely a 0.2 on the Richter scale, but they are terrifyingly metronomic. This isn't a natural geological process. This is a heartbeat. This morning, Ben shouted for me to come to the drill site. The hole we drilled 2 days ago has closed. It hasn't collapsed or filled with debris. The edges of the granite have fused together, seamlessly. All that remains on the rock face is a faint, puckered scar, like a wound that has healed over. Maya is refusing to leave the tent. She says the pulsing is in her head now. I confess I feel it too. It feels like we are standing on the chest of a sleeping giant. This is the turning point. Thorne's detached scientific curiosity is rapidly being replaced by a palpable, intellectual dread. He realizes they are not studying a static feature. They are interacting with a dynamic, reactive system. His seismic sensors, once intended to map rock strata, are now mapping something that looks less like geology and more like anatomy. He describes the underground images as a vast, subterranean network of channels and voids, all pulsing with the same slow, 45-second rhythm. The final entry in Dr. Eris Thorne's journal is from day 15. The handwriting, which had been neat and precise, is now a nearly illegible scrawl, a testament to the author's disintegrating composure. Day 15. It knows we are here. It knows. The pulsing. It isn't just the ground now. It's the mountain. The whole peak. We were watching Mount Hollowell at dawn, Ben and I, and we saw it. The rock face on the north side, it's not solid. It's composed of massive, interlocking hexagonal plates of rock. With each pulse, we could see them shift. They expand and contract a fraction of an inch, but it's there. The entire mountain face is breathing. God help me, Ranger Miller was right. It's all breathing. Gavin, he went to touch it. He put his hand on a large boulder near camp, and when the pulse came, he screamed and fell back. He said the rock felt warm. He swore it felt like skin. We have to leave. We are packing. We have disturbed something. We have stuck a needle in the flesh of a god. The samples, the data, none of it matters now. Only survival. Maya is screaming. Not in fear. She's pointing at the ground-penetrating radar display. The image. It is no longer just a system of channels. There's a focal point now. Convergence. Something massive is moving up from the depths, directly beneath our camp. It's ascending with purpose. It's coming for us. The entry ends there. The pen trails off the page in a long, jagged line. The team, the camp, the half-eaten meal all gone. The official report, as we mentioned, concluded they were likely caught in a sudden, unseasonable rockslide, their bodies buried forever under tons of rock. A tragic, but explainable, accident. But there was no rockslide. The search team, including experienced mountaineers and geologists, surveyed the area from the air and on the ground. The landscape was stable, unchanged, except for one detail. One final, terrifying piece of data, noted by the lead rescuer but ultimately dismissed in his official report as a bizarre, localized geological anomaly. The small, flat plateau where the team's base camp had stood was now covered in a strange, newly formed sheet of smooth, dark rock. A volcanic glass like a fresh layer of obsidian that had not been there a week before. It was still warm to the touch, as if the earth, pierced and provoked, had simply swallowed the camp whole and then scabbed over the wound. Dr. Thorne's team didn't just feel the park's consciousness. They touched it. They sampled its blood and mapped its veins. And in doing so, they triggered an immune response, an act of self-preservation, as thoughtless and absolute as a human body destroying a virus. Feeling the sleeper is one thing. Analyzing its physical body is another. But what if one were to try and understand its mind? What if someone dared to learn its language? This brings us to the third and perhaps most disturbing file in our protocol for Aethelwood. It is a story not of physical intrusion, but of intellectual trespass. It brings us to the work and the subsequent tragedy of Dr. Elara Vance. Dr. Vance was not a ranger or a geologist. She existed in the rarefied world of academia. She was a historical linguist and ethnographer, a certified genius whose mind operated on a level that saw connections where others saw only coincidence. Her specialty was pre-Columbian petroglyphs, rock carvings, and the deciphering of extinct proto-languages. She could look at a series of scratches on a canyon wall and hear the whispers of a lost civilization. In 2017, her formidable intellect became focused on Aethelwood National Park for a very specific reason. On the periphery of the park, scattered across dozens of rocky outcrops and shallow caves, are a number of archaeological sites. These sites contain petroglyphs left by an ancient, unnamed people who inhabited the region over 3,000 years ago. For decades, these carvings had puzzled mainstream archaeologists. They don't depict the usual subjects of ancient art. There are no stylized images of bison hunts, no stick figures of shamanic rituals, no renderings of the sun or moon. The Aethelwood glyphs are almost entirely composed of complex, non-repeating geometric patterns, intricate spirals that fold into themselves, fractal-like webs of stunning complexity, and labyrinthine arrangements of dots and lines. The official consensus was that they were decorative, abstract art of a tribe with a peculiar affinity for geometry. A cultural footnote: Dr. Vance believed this consensus was a profound failure of imagination. She believed the glyphs were not art. They were a language, a written language of incredible sophistication, whose medium was not ink on paper, but chisel on stone. She dedicated herself to deciphering it. For 2 years, she worked tirelessly, compiling a high-resolution digital database of every known glyph. She fed these images into powerful pattern recognition algorithms of her own design, searching for the ghost of a syntax, for any sign of recurring structure. Her private research notes, which we obtained from a former colleague who grew deeply concerned for her well-being, tell a story of exhilarating discovery spiraling into a terrifying obsession. Initially, her notes are filled with the pure, unadulterated joy of intellectual breakthrough. She wrote in an early entry, "The syntax is unlike anything I have ever encountered. It's not linear. It appears to be multidimensional, designed to be read not just from left to right or top to bottom, but potentially inwards, through layers of recursive geometry. A single, complex glyph can represent an entire sentence, or even a paragraph of interrelated concepts, depending on the path the eye follows through its structure. It's more like a circuit diagram for meaning than a traditional language. It's breathtakingly elegant." As she delved deeper, she began to form a hypothesis about what the language was describing. The glyphs were not about the people who carved them. They were about the land itself. Specifically, they were about the vast central wilderness that would one day be designated Aethelwood National Park. She began a new, painstaking phase of her research, cross-referencing the geometric patterns of the glyphs with topographical maps of the park. She found direct, undeniable correlations. A complex spiral glyph, she discovered, would only ever be found on rocks that faced a specific spiral-shaped valley deep inside the park. A series of interconnected, branching lines was a perfect, one-to-one schematic of the Ethel River's tributary system. A cluster of dots arranged in a precise pattern perfectly matched the star chart of the night sky as seen from a specific peak on the summer solstice. The ancient people weren't just writing. They were creating a linguistic map, a technical manual describing the very essence and structure of the park. And then she made the translation that sealed her fate. She had identified a recurring central glyph, the most complex and intricate of them all. It appeared only in the oldest, most hidden carvings, always at the physical center of a larger array of symbols. She came to call it the Genesis glyph. After months of algorithmic analysis and intuitive leaps that bordered on genius, she believed she had translated its core concept. Her notes from that day are stark, the excited academic tone gone, replaced by something colder, awe mixed with fear. The Genesis glyph. It does not translate to God, or spirit, or world. The concepts are far too simple. My best, most literal translation of its multi-layered meaning is the dreamer who dreams itself into being. An alternate and more chilling rendering is the earth that thinks it is a mountain. In that moment, everything clicked into place. The work of Miller and Thorne, which she had read about in obscure forums, was no longer anecdotal or anomalous. It was predicted. Dr. Vance concluded that the ancient people who lived there did not see the park as a place. They saw it as a vast, sleeping mind. They were not its inhabitants. They were its witnesses. Their intricate glyphs were not just a language. They were a warning, a user manual for how to survive in the presence of a dreaming god. The implications were staggering. The glyphs that warned against breaking the skin of the land were a clear parallel to the fate of Thorne's team. The glyphs describing the deep song of the stone were a perfect match for Miller's hum. The ancient carvers had created the first wilderness protocol. Here, her research took a dangerous, hubristic turn. She became convinced that if the park was a mind, and the glyphs were its language, then it might be possible to communicate. To bridge the gap, she became obsessed with the idea that the hum, the vibration felt by Miller and measured by Thorne, was not just a side effect of its existence. It was the sleeper's voice, a form of subconscious infrasonic speech. Her final project was to reverse the process. If the glyphs were a visual representation of the sleeper's nature, she theorized that their sonic equivalent might be a way to speak to it. Using her linguistic software, she began assigning frequency values and sonic properties to the geometric nodes and pathways of the glyphs. She was attempting to turn the written language back into its spoken form. The last entry in her research log details her final, fatal experiment. It reads like the prologue to a tragedy. I have done it. By assigning frequency values to the geometric nodes of the Genesis glyph, I have created a sonic file. A sound wave that is, in theory, the acoustic equivalent of the phrase, the dreamer who dreams itself into being. It is a complex, low-frequency wave, layered with ultra and infrasonic frequencies that I can only see on the spectrograph. Most of it is outside the range of human hearing, but the core components are audible as a low, pulsing hum. It is eerily, exactly similar to the Aethelwood buzz reported in some accounts. I have to know. The scientific and philosophical implications are too vast to ignore. This is the first contact with a truly non-human consciousness. Tomorrow, I am driving to Aethelwood. I have a special permit for archaeological survey. I am taking a high-powered parabolic speaker and a portable power source. I am going to the heart of the park, to the base of Mount Hallowell place Thorne's team vanished. I am going to play the sound. I am going to speak the sleeper's name to its own face. Dr. Alara Vance's rental car was found a week later, parked at a deserted trailhead on the edge of the Whispering Peaks. Her hiking pack, wallet, and personal effects were sitting on the passenger seat. Of Dr. Vance and her specialized sonic equipment, there was no trace. The park rangers who found the car noted only one strange thing in their report. In a 500-foot radius around the vehicle, the forest was completely unnaturally silent. Every bird, every insect, every form of audible life was gone. Two seasoned rangers, men who had spent their lives in the woods, both described the silence in the exact same way. They said it felt like a vacuum, a crushing, heavy silence that hurt their ears. It seems Dr. Vance succeeded in her experiment. She called out to the sleeper using its own ancient name, and the sleeper perhaps answered, or perhaps, more terrifyingly, in the depths of its geological slumber, it simply registered her voice as an irritating dream sound, a fleeting anomaly in its eons-long sleep. And in the process of swatting away the annoyance, it unmade her. So what have we learned? We have followed three distinct threads of evidence, three separate intrusions into the mystery of Aethelwood, each one ending in retreat or tragedy. Let us, for a moment, lay them side by side. We have the testimony of Ranger Frank Miller, a man of the earth, a practical observer who, through years of first-hand experience, felt the fundamental nature of his world begin to change. He felt the ground beneath his feet vibrate with a rhythm that was not geological, but biological. He witnessed the native fauna behaving like puppets whose strings were being pulled by an unseen hand. He felt the park breathe. We have the physical data of Dr. Eris Thorne's lost expedition, a team of scientists who, with the finest tools of their trade, set out to map inert rock. Instead, they discovered the impossible. They drilled into what they believed was stone and found fibrous, organic matter. They took a core sample and the mountain bled. They provoked it, and the ground itself healed its own wound and purged their existence. They did not map a batholith. They mapped a piece of a vast, living anatomy. They touched its flesh. And finally, we have the tragic research of Dr. Alara Vance, a brilliant linguist who uncovered the ultimate secret, hidden in plain sight on the rocks for 3 millennia. She deciphered the language of a people who lived in awe and terror of the truth. She learned that the land was not a place but a mind. And in her hubris, she attempted to speak to that mind, using its own language. She whispered its true name into the void, and the void answered with an absolute, crushing silence. She trespassed into its consciousness. 3 different fields of study: sensory observation, geological science, and linguistic archaeology, all leading to the same inescapable and monstrous conclusion. Aethelwood National Park is not a passive landscape of trees and rock. It is a single, unified entity, an ancient, dormant consciousness of immense scale and power, whose physical body is the mountain range and whose thoughts are as slow as eroding stone. The hum that Miller felt is its breath, the slow, steady respiration of a being whose lifespan is measured in geological epochs. The seismic pulses that Thorne measured are its heartbeat, each thud separated by nearly a minute of our frantic, fleeting time. The strange, organic lace granite is its flesh and bone. The glyphs are the record of its nature, left by a long-vanished people who understood the terrible truth and built their entire culture around a single, desperate imperative. Do not disturb the sleeper. This reality, paid for by the sanity of one man and the lives of 5 others, leads us, finally, to the protocol. These are not rules for enjoying your hike. These are the rules for survival. They are not found in any official park brochure. They are pieced together from these tragedies. Protocol Rule 1. You are a visitor, not a conqueror. Your presence within the park's boundaries is a temporary and tolerated intrusion. Act like it. Stay on the marked trails. The paths exist for a reason, established over decades of use. They are the designated, known thoroughfares on the surface of the sleeper's skin. To wander off-trail, to blaze your own path, is to risk stepping somewhere you shouldn't. It is to risk treading on a nerve. Protocol Rule 2. Do not break the skin. This is perhaps the most critical rule, the one for which we have the most terrifying evidence. Do not dig. Do not drill. Do not excavate for souvenirs. Do not hammer pitons into rock faces where you do not need to. The surface is the boundary. To pierce the ground at Aethelwood is to perform an unwanted, invasive surgery on a patient that is orders of magnitude more powerful than you are. As Dr. Thorne's team learned, the response will be biological, swift, and absolute. Protocol Rule 3. Listen to the silence. The normal sounds of a forest are your shield. The chirp of a cricket, the call of a bird, the rustle of leaves, the buzz of a fly. These are the sounds of normalcy. They are the indicator that the sleeper is resting peacefully. If the forest falls silent, the sudden, pressurized, vacuum-like silence that Miller described and that Vance created, that is your final warning. The hum is growing louder. The consciousness is stirring. It is time to leave. Do not wait. Do not investigate. Retreat quietly and as quickly as you can. Protocol Rule 4. Do not seek to understand it. This was the fatal mistake of Dr. Ilara Vance. The consciousness of Aethelwood is not human. It is alien to us in a way we cannot truly grasp. Its thoughts are tectonic plates shifting. Its dreams are the formation of weather patterns. Its language is the mathematics of geometry and the physics of vibration. To attempt to comprehend it, to communicate with it, is to invite an existential crisis from which there is no return. Your mind is a fragile, temporary thing, evolved to navigate a world of predators and prey, not to contemplate the inner life of a thinking mountain range. It will break you before you even begin to grasp it. I have stood at the edge of Aethelwood myself. I drove to the park entrance last year, on a cold, gray autumn day. I didn't go in. I parked my car, walked to that large, welcoming wooden sign, and I just stood there and listened. And I felt it. The hum. It's real. It's a low-level pressure in your sinuses, a subtle vibration that seems to come up from the soles of your feet into your sternum, a feeling of immense, ancient, and indifferent weight. And in that moment, I understood that all our human activity, our laughter, our brightly colored tents, our crackling campfires, our footsteps on the trail are nothing. We are a momentary rash, a fleeting itch on the surface of something that was dreaming long before our species was born, and will continue to dream long after our cities and our monuments have turned to dust. The ultimate danger of Aethelwood is not that it is malicious. In a way, that would be comforting. A malicious entity can be fought, its motives can be understood, its actions can be predicted. The terror of Aethelwood is that it is utterly and completely indifferent. The tragedies that occur there are not acts of aggression. They are the cosmic equivalent of a sleeping human, deep in a dream, reflexively swatting a mosquito that has landed on their arm. A thoughtless, neurological, and utterly final action. The park is not a place. It's a living, breathing, and very old consciousness. And the most important rule of the protocol is the simplest one of all. Let it sleep. Thank you for joining us for this installment of the Wilderness Protocol. The world is older and stranger than we are taught, and it is vital to remember that some places are not meant for us. If you have had your own unexplainable experiences in the deep wilderness, experiences that defy conventional explanation, we invite you to share them in the comments below. Your story could be a vital piece of a puzzle we are all trying to solve. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and stay safe.